when I'm sharing that that I can't see you. Okay. Yes, over to you, Femi.
Okay, sir. Good afternoon, Professor, Associate Professor Adeyemi, Shola Adeyemi, and Mr. Jaman and Nikolaku. I'm reluctant to call you Mr. because of your contributions to the cultural landscape, but protocols have to be kept the way they are. So, good afternoon to Professor Shola Adeyemi and to Mr. Jaman. I'm glad to have this pairing at this panel, which is panel 4. The title of the panel is really, really very energetic, from legacy to renaissance. Um, I'm sure that it's crafted by those who have scholastic perspective, because from the perspective of journalism, we usually like to have a 8-word, 5-word titles, So yeah, I'm also very, very happy that we are trying to reenact memory, especially as relates to the Ibadan Literary Society and the attempt to bring together creatives, writers, intellectuals, practitioners, advocates in the arts, culture, and literary landscape of Ibadan and Nigeria to birth not just a festival, but a community that sustains a festival. Um, I'm glad that at a point in time in 2016, Professor Shola Adeyemi and Jaman Anikulapo were alongside Mr. Dele Morakinyo, Mr. Kolade Mosuru, Omotayo Morgan, and a couple of others came together to say the birthplace and the intellectual city, the intellectual capital of Nigeria, must not be um, must not be sleeping on the heels of Mapo instead of leading the charge. This was at a time where we already had festivals, Ake Book and Arts Festival, the Lagos Book and Arts Festival, almost in its 20th year, and Ibadan was still doing monthly events like Atmosphere, like Sankofa, like the Anna book. And so it didn't sort of resonate, because this was the place, this was the ivory tower, this was Mbari, this was where Mbari started, this was the hot spot of the likes of Wole Soyinka, Yoshundare, Libya, and the rest. Not to take too much words from your mouth, let me just go straight to introducing the masters who um, have trained the rest of us, the younger generations. German Anikulapo is a prominent cultural journalist, curator, and cultural advocate. Not to read too much, German is the chairman of the Committee for Relevant Arts, the organizing body of the Lagos Book and Arts Festival, Nigeria's premier book and arts festival. He's also the honorary fellow of the Academy of Letters, and he recently received the UNESCO Defender of Cultural Award at Buenos Aires, Mexico. German, a man of many parts, but firstly a journalist and editor of the Guardian newspaper, someone who changed the landscape of artistic writing, culture writing, and culture reporting in Nigeria. He's also a member of several boards like the Lagos International Poetry Festival, Bloom Arts, and several others. Mr. Jaman and Nikolapo, you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much to Femi Morgan. It's like we're playing incest here, because you're also part of the experience in 2016. But then I want to thank IBA Fest, Ibadan Festival of Arts. Again, something that looked like an insult too, because Savio, but I must say, had been part of the DNA of the festival that we run in Lagos. It was always present. So when this whole Ibadan experience came, I quickly bought into it, and same thing with Dr. Shola Adeyemi. Shola is going to give the presentation, but let me just say that just as a cover, I run an organization called the Committee for Relevant Art, CORA, and we run the founded 34 years ago, and we run the Lagos Book and Art Festival, founded in 1999, which means we're 27 this year. The next edition is November 10 to 16, and IBA Fest will be part of that. Okay. And the plan, the mission of the organization had always been, part of its first mission is that we should have a book festival, not just book fair, book festival in every city of the country, if it is possible. And I'm sure that we've gained some mileage in that. And Shola Adeyemi and I, we've partnered on so many things. So when Professor Femi Oshofison was going to be 70, so we launched this idea almost 10 years ago. By next year, Oshofison will be 80. That will have been the 10th anniversary of this organization. So it was Oshofison that first inspired us to use the platform to do that. But the main inspiration is the film by Femi Odugbemi. So having said that, we should call Ibadan the literati, the cradle of literati, which was directed and produced by Femi Odugbemi. So in the slide that Shola Adeyemi will be presenting, you'll be able to see that. Maybe you want to do a quick introduction of Shola Oshofison, so that Shola Adeyemi, so that I can start today.
Yes, sir. Mr. German, you are not wrong if you add Oshofison to his name, because looking at his profile, you would see that he's a professor of drama at the University of East Anglia. He's a honorary research fellow at the Goldsmiths University in London, and he's also a renowned scholar and a board chair of the African Theatre Association. A lot of his scholastic investment has been vested in African theatre performance and conversations and discourses around theatre. So you are not far from the tree does not fall too far from the branch. Or the leaf does not fall too far from the branches. So you could add Oshofison to his name if you would want.
If I would like to add that Shola Adeyemi is the main scholar, and I mean it, is the main scholar of Oshofison literature. So maybe that was why Oshofison was called. But there's another Shola Oshofison who is also a poet, writer, now a filmmaker. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Shola.
So you are welcome, Professor Shola Adeyemi.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Femi. If only for some reason my video is blanked,
Okay.
and I cannot start the video because it is disabled by the host. But anyway, it's not my face that is important here. It is the topic we're discussing this morning, which is about the legacy of oh yeah, that's me. The legacy of the Ibadan Literary Society. As German said, the idea came from the film, or was inspired by the documentary film Ibadan, the Cradle of Literati, produced and directed by Femi Odugbemi. But you have to recall that Ibadan was the base for almost all publishing houses in Nigeria and companies, such as Evans Brothers, Spectrum Books, Oxford University Press, Cambridge, and even some independent ones like New Horizon, booksellers. And Ibadan is also the first, the city of the first university in West Africa, University College, or later University of Ibadan, founded in 1948. But all those are modern history. Ibadan, right from establishment, had been a center of development, a center of progress. Ibadan is a very young city. It was settled in 1829 after the war, the war about slavery. And by 1830, it had become the center of Yoruba cities. It was huge expanse, and the missionaries came. By 1853, they had established the first school, the first Christian Western school in Nigeria, 1853, with students uh, such as the Oluloyo family, Oluloyo chief, enrolled his children, and Yejide and her brother were the first pupils. But even before then, there were madrasas, right from 1831, established by the Fulani, by the Malians, to teach Islamic religion, Islamic education. So Ibadan has always been in the forefront of progress, of publication, of enlightenment. And but within 10 years of Ibadan being founded, it had become the leading center of education and growth in all Yoruba land. You know. But even prior to all that, because of the people who founded Ibadan, they came from all over Yoruba land. It was a pot, melting pot of development, of competition, of achievement. And the image you are seeing, if you can see properly, is just a sample of some of the writers in Nigeria who are linked or who came from Ibadan. And even now, Ibadan, I mean, Nigeria is a major city in a major country in the world, but there has never been as many writers from anywhere else in Africa as you have from Ibadan, or who are based in Ibadan. And it's due to the development of Ibadan, the university system, and the establishment of, as we had this morning, the Mbari Club, the Mbari Arts Club, which was also established by writers such as Wole Soyinka, J.P. Clark, Ezekiel Mpatlele, J.F. Odunjo, Isaac Delano, and Amos Tutuola. Why the Ibadan Literary Society? A key objective of Ibadan Literary Society is the creation of a literacy map of Ibadan, providing biographical and bibliographical data on writers and artists, including those already listed, associated with Ibadan. We established the center in Ibadan, and we planned the center to consist of galleries, a museum, conference facilities, archival system, and a major research center on the growth and development of culture and literature in Nigeria. And as German said earlier, this is not just limited to Nigeria, to Ibadan. We want every city in Nigeria to have a form of this archival system whereby we showcase our development, showcase our publishing, showcase our work, our work of enlightenment in the arts, in the publishing, and also in science. Professor Niyo Shundari, fellow of the Nigerian Order of Merit, a poet, dramatist, literary critic, and the People's Voice, of course, agreed to be the founding chair of Ibadan Literary Society. And the first thing we did was to have the Ibadan Literary Festival, which was two festivals. The first one was the Ibadan Book Conference, and then the Ibadan Book Festival. The Ibadan Book Conference was on the 11th of June, 2016 at the Conference Center of the University of Ibadan. As the moderator said, Femi Morgan, it was all put together by those of us here, Femi Morgan, Dele Morakio, Firopo Iwela, Ben Tomoloju, German, of course, and Professor Ayobanjo, late Professor Ayobanjo, agreed to preside over that event. And the keynote speech on that day was given by Dr. Kolade Moshuru, on the book, the people, and the challenges of growth. It was quite an interesting thing because it reinforced all our plans and ideas and agenda about the Ibadan Literary Society and the Ibadan Book Festival, about the establishment of all these uh, factors in Ibadan. The conference itself or the keynote discussed the situation of the book industry as it affects every player in the publishing sector. Actually, the takeaway point from that is that Dr. Moshiro would have wanted almost every corner of Ibadan to have a book stand, you know, so that people could go there, get a book, read, return, you know. If only this could be funded so that everywhere you go, there are books for you to develop yourself on any aspect of life, not just religion or literature, but books on any aspect made available for everybody who is interested. Laudable goal. But the book festival, which followed the conference, took place from the 13th of June to the 17th of June in two places, both at the conference center and also there were some uh, exhibitions at the booksellers on Jericho Road. And so these are some of the pictures that of the participants during the conference. So the journey has begun, the legacy is there. So we have had the first book conference, we launched the Ibadan Literary Journal, we had the first Ibadan Book Festival, which and I must say that I'm very, very delighted that we now have IBA Fest 2025 and be following the growth of the monthly meetings, which have been very, very instructive, very informative. And I'm also delighted that one of the key figures of IBAFest is also the founding chair of Ibadan Literary Society, Professor Niyo Shindari. But also part of what we wanted to do was also a journal, a literary journal, to document all these things as part of the archival system. And the writer, dramatist Bentomoluju is the editor of that. And as Femi mentioned earlier, Mr. Dele Murakio is still the coordinator of all these programs. German. Is German still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk on the journal?
Oh, well, the journal was supposed to be, I guess the journal business has now become very popular. I mean, but we wanted to go outside of what the academics, what you have in the academia, you have the journals, but then most of the time, these journals do not necessarily connect. Not out of the fault of the editors or founders of those journals, but because it's already branded as something within the academia, and so it doesn't necessarily penetrate to outside. How many of us get to see that? Unless when you go to book fair or when the university is doing, the particular university is doing something. So we thought of a journal that will be able to bring quite a lot of things that people are doing that are not necessarily reported, or the works that people are doing. For instance, the work that Ibadan Book and Art Festival is doing will have been a top subject for such kind of journal. Or what Dr. Tony Mario, who we have to give a lot of credit for what he was doing in Ibadan those days, and what atmosphere, which Femi Morgan, Oluwasegun, and the rest of them, what they were doing, what the Servio and atmosphere were doing. Some of these materials do not get into the journals that come from the academia. So we thought that we could get contributions and reflections on what other people are doing within those places. At that time, I was offered a residency program after I left the Guardian newspaper as editor. I was offered the residency program by the Faculty of Arts in UI, but I wasn't able, as a hustler, I wasn't able to make it because I also had to feed post-retirement from the Guardian. So I couldn't make it. I'm just giving an excuse why probably we did not follow through. And then the following year, I think Dr. Sholade Emi, now Professor Sholade Emi, was going to come and observe his sabbatical in Ibadan. that too did not come true. So that was why we couldn't continue on that. But then early this year, we started talking about the 10th anniversary of, the 80th birthday of Professor Femi Oshofuson, who was the grand spirit behind the whole formation. And we was already thinking of the 10th anniversary of the ILS, during which all the program I wanted to do will have manifested. But then here comes Ibadan Book and Art Festival, and I was very, very, very happy that at least somebody is doing that, and that we would like to support. That's why I approached Sergio Baramosi, who, as I said earlier, is part of the DNA of whatever we do in the literary scape. You've done it also in Abuja and Benin. So we're very happy that that is happening. That there's an Ibadan International Film Festival. I always promised myself that I was going to make it, and I think I saw the founder director in the earlier session. There's the Ibadan Poetry League, there's the Ibadan Theatre Renaissance or something. So all of these will have been material that will have been able to put into the journal if it had worked. So the recording stopped. I hope we've not overspent our time. We started at 12:46. Hello?
Yeah, we're still on. We're still on.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's the recording that stopped. We're
Okay.
still on.
Okay. So I think I've given the basic background. So maybe question from the moderator or from the house.
Yeah, I'm curious because of history and because we are doing this for posterity. I would like Adeyemi to do a small expose on the Mbari Club. I was not born at that time, and I'm confident to say that my narrative of the Mbari Club is status quo. The first conversation of the Mbari Club was between myself and Professor Niyo Shundare. But at the same time, I feel that scholars have a full grasp of how that evolved towards national development and how that collaboration brought about not just the dance and but the verses that have shaped the country for years. So just an expose of that glorious moment where collaboration met excellence. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, Ibadan, first of all, I must say now that there's been a lot of work done on what the Mbari did, especially the journals, or most especially the journals. But what has not been really studied is the community that was created by these scholars. These scholars were they were not all Nigerians. I mean, there were South Africans, there were Ghanaians, but the Mbari arts movement was a movement of artists, painters, writers, dramatists, poets, and that's why we always front load the discussion with names by J.P. Clark or Wole Soyinka. But there are also people like Dimas Nwoko, Bruce Onompraya, or even musicians or artists like Kola Ogumola and Duro Lade, but they were all part of it. And of course, educationists like G.F. Odunjo and Isaac Delano. The whole idea behind the Mbari movement was to create a community of artists to collaborate. And the collaboration was not just to focus on one aspect of the art or writing or music making or songwriting, but how all these things can work together. And that's why you find Wole Soyinka directing JP Clark's work, or Achebe presenting a paper on somebody else's work, or the designs of Nwoko himself. And when you see the building, it doesn't exist anymore now in Mokola. You find the drawings and the paintings of all the members there and their names. But it was also a restaurant and a beer parlor, of course, because you wanted people to be able to come there and socialize. And people did come there, especially the publishers. As I said earlier, Ibadan had almost all the publishing houses from Evans, Heinemann, Cambridge University Press. Cambridge University Press at that time was the editor was the poet Christopher Okibo, who was also a member of the Mbari Club. And then you have Chief Backout, who was with the Heinemann then. I think it was Heinemann before he formed his own Spectrum Books. So that's what the Mbari did. But one thing that we wanted to take on from Barry was that sense of community, but we wanted to expand it. And this is one of the ideas that we discussed with some of our mentors then, Chief Alhaji Adegboye Garulogun and Dr. Lekan Are, about establishing this center in Ibadan, which will serve not just as a museum or archive, but as a training center, a crafts training center for people to learn so many of the crafts, not about writing only, but about publishing, about design, about anything related to the development of artworks. You know, yeah, I don't know what other
Yeah,
thing.
you've answered the question, and your response is beautiful. What the only thing that comes to mind is a silly joke that your conception of this center does not have a beer parlor like Mbari. And secondly, it's somehow frustrating when you realize that Mbari in Mokola, there was no government with the intellectual depth to realize that that could be a tourist center for generations and for people to come from all over the world to see that space. There wasn't any attempt, as far as I know, to preserve that space as a not just as an architectural reference, but also as a reference for culture. And that
Yeah,
speaks to how we don't take ourselves seriously in this country.
yeah, you are right about that. And I think it also has to do with the funding. And that's why when we wanted to start by the Literary Society, we were wary about going after funders, because of their own other agendas. The main funding for Mbari Arts Club was a blind company from CIA. So it's really affected the heritage and legacy of Mbari. Many of the writers did not know the source of this funding. So, and they thought they were participating in this altruistic organization to develop the arts. But the CIA definitely must have its own agenda. So they were funding it. Of course, they were not just funding it because they wanted to fund it, but because they were using it for their own purposes, nefarious purposes. Because it's CIA, they were not doing it for holistic purposes. So there was that. The other thing is the Civil War, the Nigerian Biafra War,
Oh,
which broke out. Mentioned Christopher Okibo, who later died on the war front,
yeah.
Chino Achebe, who was part of the Biafra government, Wole Soyinka, who had his own third force. And then you had those who were not Nigerians, and partly ladies from South Africa. So the Civil War broke up everything.
Mm.
And it created a lot of ill feelings. So not just against the government, but among themselves. So you then had people like J.P. Clark who had to move to University of Lagos because they didn't want that association. Soyinka moved to Ife. Also, there was a disperser of these ideas. And the buildings they were using was not their building. So, of course, they made designs, they made decorations, but it couldn't be preserved. But now we have to thank the efforts of people like Kola Tubosun, who is compiling all the past editions of the
Yeah.
Mbari journal. Just a few more that
Obvious.
still could have been found. So
Obvious.
it's a
Yeah.
very commendable effort. So that's one way of looking at it. Like you said, that building could have been a museum or something. But it's just a building. It can be recreated anywhere. It's similar to
Anywhere.
what Dr. Moshoro has done with the booksellers. It used to be the British Council office and then the British Council Library, you know. And when they wanted to move away, the British Council moved away from Ibadan, it bought it and turned into the booksellers. And when you go to the booksellers, it's not just for selling books or buying books. It's also a community. There's a yard
Yeah.
which you can use for book readings, for presentations, for meeting together. And I'm sure that's all part of, as Dr. Moshoro said, part of that idea to create that community there. So people don't just go there to buy or read books, but also to meet, discuss, create new ideas, germinate ideas. The place is still there, you know. And and of course you have Adegbola's place in Bodija, which is also an offshoot of this general idea because you have to know that Adegbola is linked to Bola Ige, and Bola Ige was also
Yes.
part of the Mbari Arts
Yes.
Club.
Yes, I know.
So this legacy is still there. We're building on it. What we need is a marshalling of all these ideas together with one voice. You know, we need to come together to collaborate. It shouldn't be seen as I'm the leader, you are the leader, you. It's all a generic congregation of everybody involved, you know, to come together with with a single goal, make Ibadan great for the arts and book. So we have the festivals, we have the conferences, we have the journals, we have the galleries, we have the museums, we have the archives, but everything is linked and everybody cooperates and everybody is involved interrelatedly with all these plans, with all these dreams. You know, it's something that's and I'm sure the organizers of FIBA Fest have also experienced it. It's something that we experienced. Femi, you remember, you know, you had this idea, but then you then had people say, "Oh, I want to be the only person doing these things. Why are other people doing it? Oh, by the way,
Hmm.
this Jama is not from Ibadan, or Shola is not from Ibadan, you know." And Papa Rulugun at that time just said, "What do you mean somebody is not from Ibadan? Ibadan belongs to everybody." And in any case, it's not about every Ibadan. It's about individual achievement, individual accomplishment being celebrated. You know.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to bring it back home. And by bringing it back home, I mean I
Um,
want both I
when you
want
put,
both I want both Mr. Jama and Mr. and Professor Shola to talk about their personal Ibadan experience. I know that the great cultural advocate is a product of the University of Ibadan. And I know that he spent several years in Ibadan before his great migration to Lagos. And I also know that Professor Shola Adeyemi is also a product of Ibadan. The Ibadan history lives within his veins, despite the diasporic migration. You know, I think that those who migrate from Ibadan will not find it easy. My good friend and mentor, Mr. Tade Padiola, says there's no better place to live than Ibadan. So I would like to hear that personal narrative about your time in Ibadan as perhaps a student. How did it how did it how did it shape your craft? You know, as scholar, as curator, as intellectual, yeah, so that we can all learn from that. Thank you.
okay, yeah, I'll go
German.
for just a piece of information. 2023, while we're doing ranking for the production of Demand Died, which is based on, inspired by Soyinka's prison memoir. So we went round, and Soyinka was in the car with us, and we were looking for that spot because the Mbari site had two iterations. There was one that was, I think it's been turned into, there's a fuel station on that particular spot now.
Mm.
And you could see it distinctly, there's a fuel station. But just behind it, just a few meters away from it, a guy, I forgot his name now, but it's called Africa, just like our Ocho Africa. He built something that looked like what Mbari used to be. And if you see the film The Man Died, that was where that film, the clubbing scene was shot there. What was supposed to be the meeting of Ukigbo, Shoyinka, Achebe, all of them, was shot in that particular spot. It's very colorful space, but hidden in the back end of that particular area. So I'm going to encourage the organizers of the Ibadan Festival to pay a visit. I can source the man's number because it's ready. He's an Afrobeat musician too. So just a piece of information. Now, talking about how my year in Ibadan really impacted me. I was already a practicing artist in Lagos. I was part of the Ajo Productions led by Jide Ogunbade and Bent Modejo. And it was in their head that everyone who was passing through them must go to Ibadan. That's why Antalanion, Norbert Young, myself, Tunji Timiri, many of us migrated towards Ibadan. There was one character in Ibadan then who would not let you rest, and that was Dapo Adeluga. Dapo had been part of that whole experience. So Mbari was drummed into your head. It's like every class, Mbari must show up. And he kept on telling us that, look, the greater production that have been done were because these young people, they were in their 20s. People won't believe. I mean, some of them were not even up to 20. Achebe probably was like, I think he was the oldest of them. Yeah. Shoyinka was the youngest. What they did was that they will move from outside of the university and then go into town, and they were impacting the environment. So it made us to continue to study those things, what was going on in those days. And then he started publishing the Lace Occasional, is it called Lace Occasional Publications?
Lace, yes, Lace Occasional,
Is it LAC? Yeah.
LACE,
Yes.
Literature and Culture and Educational.
I think that, okay. So when he was publishing that, and all the interviews, virtually everybody was part of that experience, were featured in that interview. So I will encourage anybody who is interested to get a hold of Lace. Unfortunately, the library at UI got burned, of UI Theatre got burned, but I'm sure there will be some who still have some copy of that Lace man. I wish you could reproduce some of those things. So we grew up steeped in the whole idea of Mbari. If I made sure to even go and see those places, from there you then go to New Culture Studio. Dematsuwoko, who by the way is 90 this year and will be celebrated at my festival. You made us to go to those places and see plays and sit down and try to form a commune. But as students, rascally, as we were not able to bring back anything tangible. So Ibadan really shaped us. And that was what we thought we should give back to Ibadan by, that elevating that. We lost the Ibadan experience because of what had happened. Ibadan, Ife, we lost all of them. We lost all those production centers. So we thought we should bring back to Ibadan. So it was some kind of nostalgic project. And I'm happy that it's being manifested now. As I mentioned, there's Ibadan Festival now. There's Ibadan International Film Festival. There's Ibadan Poetry League. And there's so many things happening right now in Ibadan. So Ibadan actually formed us. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, Ibadan
over
is
to you,
home.
Prof.
Yeah, for me, Ibadan is home. Growing up with going to Kingsway for ice cream and all those, but those were not the Ibadan for me. The main Ibadan was getting lost in the old Dube, or going to Wesley College, but also playing around in the University of Ibadan. And I remember growing up going to the Arts Theatre, now Wole Soyinka Arts Theatre, not to watch plays. I was so young, but to just peep through the louvers window to watch them rehearse. Of course, I saw the place as home because people like the Kwadeluba that was mentioned was my father's friend, so I saw it as home, and Fabio Jefferson was always telling stories, and just sitting there. And later, when I went to university, you had the people like Tunji Oyelana and the Benders. And Tunji Oyelana taught me music, and part of his teaching method was to take us to wherever he was performing and ask us to also perform with him. So it was quite an exciting period. You had Jide Malomon, who was part of the WNTV, WNBS, and then later Ogun State Television. So with all the media aspect of it, you had Sumbo Mario with the technicals. And at a point, Sumbo Mario actually gave me and one a friend of mine, Alfonso Orisare, the key to the arts theater. We were managing the place. We managed the place for 4 years, you know. So, and all this led us to see how things could be conserved because we saw so many things were being lost. And the fire of 1995 was very devastating, which burnt the entire theater, the entire archives, and so some of it that we were, Alfonso and myself, were all keeping together, collecting from everywhere else, and putting in the back of the stage and the green rooms, for future things. So Ibadan for me is home. It's the beginning of development, you know.
Hmm.
And anytime I'm thinking of any idea, I always go back to Ibadan mentally, in my mind. What would I have done 20 years ago? How do I approach this new work with what I've learned from there? So Ibadan cannot be removed from my bloodstream. It's like Dr. Lekan Are says, Ibadan blood flows in my veins. If you want to get rid of me, get rid of Ibadan. So thank you
Yeah,
very much. Yeah.
yeah, I sort of relate. I relate.
I've been told that we have to wrap up.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me just, hit the ground running with some of those questions. I wish that this conversation should go on and on because I came prepared, particularly because working with people like German, you have to uh, prepare twice because German is both scholarly and more or less on the street. So you have to be ready on
He's
both
a
sides
street
of the
boy.
divide. So I'm careful. I'm careful. I'm curious to ask about how you were able to negotiate while organizing the Ibadan Literary Society. How you were able to negotiate the several stakeholders within the Ibadan space. Because one of the challenges that I found was that every stakeholder has his own mini vision of what the landscape should be. And so between debating venues and engaging um, event flow and personality differences, egos,
Hmm.
culture, and modernity, how did that stakeholder engagement play out?
Yeah, before German responds,
I don't know whether we have
I would just want to say Ibadan Bole, Ugbole in a good way.
okay. Do we
Yeah.
That
have
is,
time to go into that? Because we've been told that we have to another session is looming. I will say
by
that that's
just
the
allowing everybody to contribute their own portion. And that's why we never seek funding. Because also when you want to seek funding, others will now start seeing other agendas to your funding, or I don't want to contribute because somebody else, you are focusing on collecting money from somebody else or from the government. But allowing people to bring their talents and their ideas to the table helps.
So last words from Mr. Jaman and Nikolapo.
well.
Um,
I'd just like to say that we have to give special thanks to those who were part of the beginning. Yourself, Femi
Yeah.
Morgan, and Oluwashogo. I'm told he's now moved into technical, so I don't know if he's still in the art. Then Kolade, Olanrewaju, Mr. Dele Morakiyo, and
Yeah.
of course, our mentors, the Niyo Shundari, Dr. Musuro, Femi Oshofison, and all those older fellows who came to support us. And including the entire faculty of art, Professor Dela Iwola.
Yeah,
There's so many of them really moved into the project. Unfortunately, I hope they are not disappointed, because I remember Dr. Mosuro always asking, when are you guys coming? And I said, until we clear the question you were getting into, until we clear the debris. Because there was actually a lot of pressure to discourage the thing. We tried with those nebulous statements about, you are not from Ibadan, why are you coming? You came, they were there. But then I think we survived, and I know that the Buffett, because I know Savio. Savio is a very strong. One of the people that are showing out called Lori Kuku. I'm sure that he will continue. He will continue, and because he must be facing that same challenge now, in spite of the aura of support that he seems to be getting. But we are with him. We're going to the full blast onto this project, because it's a legacy project. We thank him for.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks to Femi for this. And thanks, German. I think.
Thank you very much for allowing me to moderate this session, and thank you, Seville Badamoti, for curating Ibadan's festival. I wish you all the best, and I from here I would say I'm signing out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have we been disconnected?
No, not yet.
So we have to leave.
No, because
Okay.
they are moving to another room, yes.
Okay. All right.
You should be joining the other room.
So let me just pin everybody and also disappear in a way.
Thanks.